everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Micah, welcome to my hobby channel, Floating in Dreams, where I like to talk about all things fashion and makeup. In today's makeup video, as you can see, and as you may have been able to see from the thumbnail and the title, we are talking about my Melt eyeshadow palette collection. So in case you're new here, I have been doing this since the start of this year, where every month I like to come on here and talk about all of the palettes that I have from a certain brand. Do the swatches, just have a grand old mooch about eyeshadow, because that is just my favorite thing to talk about and review for you guys. So that's why I like to go over things so that you can really get a vibe for everything that I have from what a brand has to offer. And that includes some discontinued palettes that were limited edition, etc, etc. Now, if you really enjoy eyeshadow palettes as much as I do, then please stay tuned, because in August, almost every single video I will be doing is going to be eyeshadow palette related, because like last year, I'm going to be doing eyeshadow palette extravaganza in the entire month of August, and then I'll also show you my full eyeshadow palette collection video. So if you would like to see more of this, then definitely stay tuned for that. But for now, let's just get to it and let's talk about some Melt eyeshadows. Let's get cracking. So as far as Melt eyeshadow palettes go, as you can see, this is everything I have, and it's definitely not their full collection. I don't own all of their palettes, and I don't own all of their stacks, because Melt is definitely a brand where I sort of pick and choose, and not all of the color stories they do appeal to me, which is why I ended up with this. Now, you do have to know that my Melt journey got started with some of their stacks. So before they did palettes, their eyeshadows came like this, and they are massive pans. I think they're like, yeah, they're almost 2.5 grams each, which is a lot of product. And I think that from a consumer perspective, something like this is just a lot more manageable. And I owned quite a few of these stacks, actually. In fact, this bigger one is a conglomeration of 3 different stacks. So I've kept some of the shades that I liked from the stacks that I've decluttered, because these are all magnetic, so they're very easy to use that way. And the one that is currently on the chopping block is the Melt She's in Party stack, because I do still want to own the palette version of this. Let me just chat about this first. The reason why I would like to own the palette version of the She's in Parties is because these shades are quite deep. Don't get me wrong, this is a really lovely mauve toned color story. It's really lovely, like mauvey, rosy plums. I'll swatch them for you in a minute. So this is a stunning plum mauve toned color story for sure, but the palette features some lighter purpley shades that I think can work better on my complexion, which is my only reason for still wanting to own the palette. Since I already own the stack, I don't really own many of the palettes that were first a stack and now turned into palettes, simply because I already owned the stacks and either I wasn't getting the use out of the stack, or like this one, the reason why I'm not getting the use out of this stack is because it's just a bit deep. It does have a really stunning highlighter shade. This shade is called Skeleton Kiss. And from what I've seen, people review so far, the palette version of this is quite close to what the stack has to offer. So I'm not too afraid that when I buy the palette that the shades aren't going to be the same, but I did keep this around just so I can make the comparison. You get one like mid-tone matte, and this has always been a little bit patchy. I believe this shade performs better in the palette, actually. And then you get the shade She's in Parties, which is lovely. Like, this is the reason why you want to own the palette and the stack. And then you get a very nice, like, deep and plum shade. And that's what this one looks like. So that was the first stack I still have, and the other stack I have is the full Gunmetal stack, so it's all the shades from that. So that's, yeah, that's these 4. That's the original Gunmetal stack. And then I decided to keep one shade called Rubbish from my from the Rust stack, and I kept one shade from my Blueprint stack. My Blueprint stack got very shattered, so that's why this was the only one that was still like working. But I decided to just pull these in because I do really like that shade, and the Gunmetal stack is my favorite stack from Melt that I have. Mainly, yeah, because of these 2 shades. Or is this the one? Yeah, these two shimmers. That's where it's at. So this shade is called Harsh Stone White, and this shade is a dirty champagne. I can't explain it in any other way. It's got a lot of gray to it, and yet it's a champagne. It's a very unique, more like inner corner highlight kind of shade for sure. I really like that. And this is this shade Industrial, which is more of like a taupey shade. And I'm still holding out for Melt to also turn this stack into a palette. And then it just came with a matte as well. This feels nice and creamy still. And then we have the Gunmetal shade. So this is what the stack is called, is like named after. And this is a really nice like charcoal gray, but it's got quite a bit of blue to it. So that's why I feel that these blues from the blueprint can work quite well. Let me see if I can swatch those for you as well. So you get this like really nice navy matte, like that's stunning. And then you also have this navy shimmer. So I'm really glad that the two blues from my blueprint stack are the ones that survive, because that would have been a shame. And then finally, last but not least, we have the shade Rubbish. And Rubbish is from the Rust stack. And this is what got a lot of people like falling in love with these like dirty mustardy brown shades. It's not very appealing when I say this, but this is like baby poop brown, really. And it's just a great crease shade, and this shade is the one that really got that hype train going. So that's why I wanted to keep that, because it is just like, if I were to just pull in that shade with some of those, like if I don't want to go for that taupey grayness, if I find that too cool toned, I can blend it with this and make it a bit more warm toned and get a bit more versatility out of this palette for sure. And then we have 6 Melt palettes here. Like I said, I don't own the Rust, I don't own the Blueprint, I don't own the 420, I don't own the Radioactive, I don't own their new Brunette. I think there may be, oh, and I never got the Vida that came with the Muerte. And that's mainly because the color stories just didn't appeal to me. It's too similar to things I already own in my collection, or they are just things that I kind of predict won't go with my undertone. And Melt is definitely a brand that favors mattes over shimmers in a lot of their palettes. So for instance, here in the Gemini, we only get 2 shimmers and everything else is matte, which is why the Smoke Sessions, which is mostly shimmers and then 2 mattes, is a nice companion to that. And that's why I first want to open all of these palettes up and tell you about my theory. I'm not sure whether the theory works or not, but it is my belief that these palettes overlap. And let me show you what I mean. All right, so I've laid everything out for you so you can see these color stories. I know that over here on the side we're missing a few shades, but that's okay. I think I can still show you what it is that I mean. And I know that a lot of people bought the Smoke Sessions, which is this palette at the bottom, to complement the Gemini, but I feel that Melt palettes kind of work that way, because shades in these palettes seem to sort of work a bit like a train. So what I mean by that is that you can take, for instance, these 3 or 4 greens, and you can complement it with the greens here in the Muerte. This Blueprint stack actually goes really nicely with these navies in the Muerte. The same with some of these neutrals in the Mary Jane. If you pull those in with the neutrals in the Gemini, you have a really nice neutral palette. These greens on this end go really nicely with these greens on this end. These reds go nicely with these pinks and with some of these reds. These grays can be pulled into this palette. And then to top things off, these like navy gray tones can again also be pulled in with the Muerte. So I have just always felt that Melt palettes, if you have a few of them like I do, that really all you kind of need is just a handful of these Melt palettes, and you could potentially do everything that is more neutral and a bit more grungy. I think that that's pretty much what it boils down to. And that's the way how Melt palettes work in my brain. For instance, the 420, which is one I don't own, it's again something that will really complement the Gemini and the Smoke Sessions really well. The Vida really nicely complemented the Muerte, but again there were some tones in there that if you have the Gemini or the Millennial Pinks, that it can all work together quite well. So I'm not sure if I'm making a lot of sense here, but I kind of feel that melt palettes work a little bit like this. Like you can connect them together to get more out of your palettes. That's just my theory. I'm not sure if they're doing that intentionally, but that's the way I feel about these. So let's now talk about these palettes individually. Let's talk about this one first. This is the Beetlejuice limited edition collection from and this is their waiting room palette. So this is what the palette looks like. It features a row of reds and then a row of grays with a black and a, well, is this a white? It is white. It looks white, but I'm pretty sure if you were to swatch this next to a white, it would look a bit gray, because it definitely seems to have a gray undertone. And I just recently finished trying this palette, and I'm going to say what I also said in my review. I really like it when a palette can be mixed and matched, and this is just not that kind of palette. These shades don't really go with the reds at the top. I think that if I had stuck to creating looks with just the two rows, I would have been a lot more successful creating looks with these. Right now I felt it just never really looked 100% right, and that has to do with the fact that these are quite cool toned and then this is all quite warm toned. So I feel it just doesn't really go together. Maybe I'm just not creative enough. That could also be the case. What I really do like is that these reds are just stunning, especially this shimmer called Sod Girl. When I put that on my lid, I was like, right, if I could not declutter this palette at this point, mainly because of that shade. So let me just swatch a few of these for you, because that's why we're here, of course. So I really like that Sod Girl shade because it has almost like a plum. And so it is red, but it pulls quite plum. And that's what I really like about that shade. And then these two are more like truer reds, these shimmers. And those go, like, they're a bit more traditional, so like it's a burnished red that I feel you also get in the Naked Heat, so from Urban Decay, so nothing too special. And this is like a true red, which is a bit more difficult to pull off. So for me, if I were to go back to this, I would definitely play around with these. Now, you will see many melt mattes to swatch like this. Please don't write them off just because a finger swatch doesn't make them look great. Very often, if a shade doesn't perform well in a finger swatch, it doesn't really mean much. Like you can see here, you can build these up. They are very soft, and you'll see that in some of my other melt palettes. This is also the reason why my blueprint came shattered. These are very fragile shadows. These, I do not recommend traveling with any of your melt palettes because that's a disaster waiting to happen. But yeah, this is what those reds look like in this palette. And then this row is really lovely too. So there we have the black, which is a good black, that gray, and these two grays on my fair skin just looked identical when I blended them out, so that may be good to know. Whether I use this or this, it didn't make much of a difference. And the white left, and this shimmer is stunning. Another reason why I wanted to own this palette, it's sort of like that harsh stone white shade in the Gunmetal stack, where it's just a little bit dirty. And this white as well, like it just has a bit of gray to it. So with these grays, to do a look with this, and a look with just the reds would have been a lot more successful. But I don't feel that the way the palette doesn't really, like, it's not one palette. It's like you get 2 5-pans. And then I think the palette that got a lot of people on Melt's radar, or put the brand on people's radar, I would say, is the Gemini. I think this sold out and you couldn't get it for a long time. It seems to, I'm not sure if this was discontinued or not, but it's been out of stock for a very long time now. So everybody's afraid that you can no longer buy this. This was, again, the palette that really put grungy color stories on the map. And when this launched, it was just incredibly unique. I didn't buy it though. I already had some melt stacks. I wasn't using them a whole lot, so I sort of passed up on this, also because at the time I could only buy melt from their official website, which is based in the US. So I tend to buy melt mostly from Beauty Bay, which makes it a little easier for me to get a hold of. I don't have to pay any extra customs or anything like that. So yeah, I definitely wait usually for Beauty Bay to stock their stuff, and they're usually pretty quick. So yeah, what you get in here is 5 browns and 5 greens. Well, this is a black, so it's not really a green, but especially these swampy greens. And also how it combines with these dirty browns, because these aren't straight up browns. Like, they're murky, swampy. That's the vibe you get here. And it is a bit deep, I have to say. I mean, I'm an NC 15 in MAC, so for my pale skin, this probably doesn't look perfect. But this is a palette that I've gone back to, especially for those greens, because they're really stunning, more olive-leaning ones, and I love that. So even though I don't love warm tones, you've heard me say that a lot if you're with this channel for a while, and you know that I don't love warm tones, but these are really nice. I do have to say, though, that the shade that I like the least in the entire palette is the shade Gemini. Like, the shade that the palette is named after, that's my least favorite one. But this Lorelei shade is really nice. It's like, again, that really dirty mustardy brown, but it's more yellow leaning, which I like. And then you just have those 2 browns here. I'm sure you can see my messy room in the background if I leave the mirror open like that. So there you have those 3 shades. And do you just see that these mattes just perform so well? So well. And that's the thing that you should know about melt. You can also see here how powdery they are. This is why I've got the towel here, so my desk doesn't get too messy, because I knew this would otherwise be a bit messy. But yeah, these shades are stunning. Now, you should know that this palette has been reviewed by people who've had it for a while. Some of the earlier palettes they did went bad really quickly, and it had stuff growing out of it, plus the shades would puff out of the pans. So there was definitely a quality issue with these shades for a while. I got mine a lot later, and I've had mine, I think, now for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, and mine is still fine. It doesn't look weird at all. So then there we have the black, which is a good black. That first swampy green. We get that green shimmer, and then the 2 shades that you would buy this palette for, I guess, are these 2. And then I think if you see them all together, that you can see what I mean with how, you know, this shade works so well with some of these greens, like this in the crease to keep it a bit more neutral, and then some of those greens, it's lovely. But also this deep brown is really lovely too with this. The black and the Gemini shade are probably my least favorite. Like, this I can use to blend things out. I mean, it is a really good palette. It really does come together, but it is limiting because of the color story you get. So that's why I do really like this, but it definitely wasn't my first melt palette pick. In fact, my first melt palette pick was this guy, the Muerte. So this released, I think, fall of 2019. It was limited edition, but it was around for quite some time. But there are so many people who are missing this palette. Now, I've said this before in some of my videos, if you want a more affordable option of this, and because you can no longer get it, look into the Baroque and the Wine and Only from ColourPop, because you get some similar shades if you're really after these kind of shades. You wouldn't get the greens nor that champagne. The champagne, I feel, is a bit superfluous, like I could have done without that in this palette. But if you really want to go for the shades that make this palette really interesting, the grunginess, then the Baroque and the Wine and Only can definitely give you similar looks, I would say. You just wouldn't have that pop of brightness to elevate the palette. But maybe that new High Tide palette that ColourPop has done could be a good rendition for these like tealy turquoisey shades that it has. But yeah, the Muerte is one where I feel, yes, this was just super unique when it launched. I never got the Vita because apart from the bright yellowy greens that it had on this end and some cool tone neutrals, that part of the palette I liked. I just never liked those really, really vibrant orangey shades on the end. So that's why I never bought the Vita, because I knew I wouldn't get the use out of this. However, this guy, I love. Again, just 3 shimmers. This one, and this one. So that's something that, you know, my shimmer loving heart, yeah, I would have liked 1 or 2 more shimmers. Like, I prefer a 50-50 split between shimmers and mattes, but that's just me. However, the way this palette just works really well is that you have little trios that you can use, and then you can just use this shade with each one for, you know, to brighten it up, for an inner corner highlight. So you can do quite a lot with this. Also the greens and the navy, so you can also make it bigger, go this way. You can really nicely put this together as well. And then this is just the shade that will go with everything. So you can definitely sort of mix and match and do different things with this look, with this color story. More so, I feel, than with the Gemini. I feel that the Gemini is a bit more limiting for my pale skin than this, because these shades are all quite cool toned, and while reds are typically quite warm toned, these have a plum undertone. Say for this one, this is a bit brighter. It's more of like a strawberry raspberry kind of red. These guys just pull a little bit more wine red. It really reminds me of like a deep Merlot. That's what I would call these shades. And that's why I feel it works. It is, however, very deep. So this is a very grungy, dark, I mean, it's called Muerte. Like, what would you expect? So you do have to bear that in mind. So if you have fair skin, it may still be that it won't work that well. However, what I struggle with as a fair skinned person is often that dark shades just muddy together and everything looks black. With this, I didn't have that issue, because these shades, when they blend out, you definitely get the colors to them. So I did really like that. So let's just do a bit of a swatch here. And this is a really interesting, like, dark shade, because it's a gray tone, but it's got some blue to it. It's really nice for deepening things up, actually. And then my favorite shade in the palette has to be Katrina, which is this navy shimmer. It's got a black base, but then loads in different shimmers. And actually, no, it's a good thing that it's on the end, because what I wanted to show you is that if you want to brighten this up a bit, if you take these blueprint blues, they'll just go with it so well. Ooh. These are so dry and flaky. Oh well. And then this one as well. Do you just see that? If you would want to get more out of these blues, you could put the blueprint blues with it quite nicely. And then we've got these reds. So you'll see what I mean, that they pull plum. Look at that. Wow. And this one as well. Wow. And then you get that really vibrant red. If I take these two shades from the Waiting Room palette and I swatch them next to it, like, do you just see that that just goes really well? So that's why I really want to pull these mattes into the Waiting Room palette and play around with some more of those shimmers, because I think that that will work really well. And then the final shade, the least interesting shade in the palette, if you were to ask me, but it is a nice, like, all-rounder that can go with a lot of these shades for sure. Now, because I own the Gemini and I felt it was a bit lacking in terms of shimmers, I got the Smoke Sessions. Now, Melt has this entire vibe with, like, weed and things like that. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But yeah, this is, I'm not sure why they take that as inspiration, but yeah, the palettes work and that's what matters. So in here you get, again, some greens, and this is more shimmer leaning. As you can see, you only get 2 mattes and everything else is shimmer. And this is one of those palettes that was a bit fragile. So you can see over here, that's not from usage. When it came, it was, this bottom half was a bit cracked, and that has led me to also store all of my Melt palettes laying flat like this, because if I keep this palette sitting upright, the shade will crack again and this will just crumble down, and it's just going to be a bit messy, and I will lose that shade if I don't, if I'm not very careful. These are the ones that you, like, if you want a promotion in your makeup skills, then definitely try a Melt palette. That's sort of how I feel about it. So this is the palette that I feel the least attached to. Like, the other ones I'm like, yeah, it's a unique color story. This is just, you know, this half is just golds with a green undertone in, like, different renditions. Did I need all of those shades? Probably not, no. This just needs a little bit more building up because I'm doing that with my ring finger. But yeah, so I do really like that shade. Like, that shimmer I really like, and that with the Gemini shades will just be lovely. But these golds, Like, this is far too yellow toned for me, this first one. I don't like shades like that. This I do like because it does have a bit more green to it. Like an antique-y kind of gold I do like. But this shade again, no. And then we've got the two mattes. So again, really lovely. And especially these like greeny shades I feel can again be pulled in with the Muerte. That's just the way I feel. And then we've got those shimmers here towards the end. Yeah, I'll do you as well. Oh, that one's so soft. That's why it cracks. And this is almost blue toned, as you can see. This is really stunning. These are really vibrant, really lovely. So that's what the smoke sessions looks like. And then we have my two latest melt purchases. I first got the Millennial Pinks. I got this on a sale from Beauty Bay for Black Friday, I think. Winter sale. I'm not sure. But this is a palette that's not very popular because a lot of people just didn't like this very much. However, I really ended up liking mine once I tried it. This is one that I definitely held off on for a while because I was like, I'm not sure if those pinks are going to be really for me. How often do I wear pink eyeshadow? But the main reason, the reason why I caved is these three shades on the end. Like, those like really murky gray tone blues. Like, my favorite kind of smoky eye to do is a blue one, so I now have quite a few of these matte blues and shimmering blues from Melt, so I can do the ones in the Muerte. I have those blueprint stack ones, and now I also have these guys on the end of the Millennial Pinks, and I'll show you what I mean, because these are stunning. And I know that a lot of people didn't like this, but if you have fair skin like me, like you see how these swatch and they seem a little thin, like the ones in the waiting room one, what that means is that you can build them up. And if shades are this dark, I don't need them to go on kapow, instant, like boom, pigment, because it means I have no control over them and it's going to be very difficult to shear them out. But with this, you can very easily blend it out and work with the shadows, and that's what I prefer. So that's what those first three shades look like. Now this shade looks like a standard champagne, but it is a peachy pink duochrome. That gives this palette just a little bit more something extra, I would say. And then we get some warmer rosy tones in the rest of the palette. So we put this one here. And these, especially these two shades that I'm swatching right now, those two I was very nervous for, like, does that suit my skin tone? But then you get this guy here, which again has a bit of a duochrome to it. So do you just see that it looks a lot more vibrant than what it does in the pan? It's why it works. And then you get these like peachy tones on this side, and this has the same issue as the smoke sessions where part of the shade cracked. So again, I need to be very careful with this one. And I just really felt that the way those shades all combined was just stunning. And I just put these in super awkward places, which is why they seem to not swatch well, but it's me swatching, not the way. Did you see that it just, if you work with these, let me build these guys up on the end. Like if you work with these, you can instantly, like really easily just build them up, get the look that you want. And like I said, these shades are easy to manipulate because they initially go on a little bit more sheer. Right, now my hand looks super stained and my fingers are stained, but we still have one palette left to go. This is the Mary Jane. This is their newest launch that I bought. I think they already came out with the brunette since then, but this launched in April and I got it straight away because a lot of people were tagging me in this and saying, Micah, Melt is doing a cool toned eyeshadow palette, so you knew I was going to be all over it. Let me block the mirror. So we can really talk about this in all its glory. So this again, it's got some very flaky shimmer shades, which if you work with Melt palettes, that's what you get. These two on the end are toppers. That's something you need to just bear in mind when you go into this. Don't expect these to go on like this onto the eye. You will see when I swatch these. Let me do that straight away. Like you can make them work. but they do need quite a bit of building up for them to really show up. And then they still don't really show up like a lot of melt shimmers do. They have a bit of a sheer quality to it. But I'll show you in a minute why I like those shades. But let me talk about the rest of the palette first. Now, this palette, when I got it home, it didn't look very cool toned. I was expecting it to be more cool toned when I looked at it on the pictures online. You get some green here, which is a bit warm toned. This is cool, but then this all looks quite warm again. So really, in my brain, when I first looked at it, it was like, yeah, great, but these are really deep. So this is not really going to be a good cool tone palette for me. It's definitely a smoky eye palette. So this is supposed to be deep and smoky and dark and grungy. I really like the looks that came out of this. I also got quite a few compliments from people who watch my videos when I was wearing these shades, because in the end, I really was able to make it work. And the reason for that is this shade. This ends up being the perfect transition for my fair skin. Do you just see how light this is? It's perfection. So no matter what I do with this palette, I go in with that shade in the crease and I can do anything. Then I can deepen it up with this one or this one, this on the lower lash line. If I want to go more cool toned, I do these. This is a stunning liner. This is a really great shimmer. And then I can top off the look with either this one or this one. And these make for some really stunning inner corner highlights as well. That's the way I've been using it and it works quite well. So let me swatch these other shades for you. So this is the other matte, and then that shimmering, well, this looks like a bronze, but really it has a bit of like a silver reflect to it, making it more cool toned, which again, in the pan, you don't see that at all. And then here we have that really soft, deeper shade, and this guy is really lovely too. Yeah, I need to swatch this guy here, else we won't have space, but that's the most magnificent deep taupe shade I've ever seen. And then this is that dark, dark, dark brown. And you know, guys, I've said it before, if you've watched other videos I do, my gripe with cool tone palettes is that they insist on putting in grays. This palette doesn't have a single gray, and yet it's cool toned. I love it. I love it. This is also really soft. Like these two, they just feel like if you drop this, you're gonna lose the shade. Like, this is like the only gray tone. This shimmer, Bamba. That's the only gray tone. But do you just see that it has a bit of like a blue almost running through? So stunning. And then this is possibly my favorite shade in the entire palette. Look at that yummy green tone taupe. It looks gold in some lights, but then taupe in others. Like, it's much warmer compared to the taupe that's actually in here, but combined, oh, they're so stunning. Which is this greener tone matte. But yeah, these shades work so well together. And now I'm going to show you why I like these topper shades so much, because what I ended up doing, so I'm going to take a bit of that green shade, and then I'm going to take a little bit of this topper shade that also has a bit of a greenish undertone. I'm going to show it here on my wrist. So I'm just going to put this on, and now I'm going to dab that shade over it. Look what happens. Do you just see, like, oh, in real life it shows up so much better than on camera. But do you just see, like, this is, let me swatch the shade next to it so that you know what it originally looks like. That's the original shade, what it looks like when you first swatch it, and then this is what it looks like if you top this shade over it. And it just gets a vibrancy and a shine that the original shade just doesn't have. So the way I view these two shades is as transformers. So if you want to amp up the look, you can really make that work. And what I like, because this makes the shade look lighter than it originally is, it works really well on my fair skin. These two palettes, they didn't get rave reviews from a lot of people, but they end up being, together with the Muerte, they're probably my 3 favorite melt palettes. So that was my entire melt eyeshadow palette collection. I know that I just like having a grand old mooch about eyeshadows. I already mentioned I don't think Melt is the brand to start off with if you're new to makeup. But if you have a bit more experience and you like more unique color stories, then this is definitely a brand to look out for. Just make sure you tap of your brush and you pack shadows and build them up slowly as you go along, rather than going in like tons of product, because then you do get a lot of fallout. So you definitely have to figure out how to make these work. They are definitely a learning curve, but these are stunning shadows, and I'm very happy with what I've got going on here. I'm definitely going to be awaiting like Melt doing another great palette. As I mentioned, I will be replacing this stack with the She's in Parties palette, because I find the palettes a bit more manageable than I do the stacks. That's just the way it is. So I am going to be getting that. But other than that, Melt hasn't released anything new yet that I'm really interested in. But who knows, maybe in like a year time I will have bought one or two more palettes. We'll see, because these are also quite expensive. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you in today's video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week, and as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a full month of eyeshadow palette related content in August. So I would like to invite you to that party, and then I hope to see you there. And let me know in a comment down below if there's any other palette collection videos you'd like me to see, me do. I will be linking the other ones I've done so far in the description box down below, so that you know which ones I have. So thanks everyone, have a great day, and yeah, take care, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye.